5%. And I think 5% is wrong. That's my hypothetical number. The 5% sometimes can be pretty loud. But most people in your communities believe that it's appropriate to have some regulations in place to protect their property interests. Protect their property interests. Because if I do something that violates Charlie's property interest, that's a negative impact to him, right? So zoning should stop me from negatively impacting Charlie's property right. Now this was an interesting discussion in Summit County a number of years ago. We had a very influential resident of the community, serving on the planning commission, said, I think I'm in the 5% group. I'm going to go for this zoning thing. You guys are smoking something. Is that what it is? You need to get up with me. I'm a farmer. I get up early, fresh air in my lungs, get my head thinking straight. You guys are sleeping in too long. That crazy farm. He was on that for a while until someone built or had approved a gravel pit next door to a dairy that he operated. And that dairy created a negative impact for truck traffic, dust, all those types of things, and then he became a strong advocate to say, we're going to do something. What we did to approve this gravel pit quarry, I've got this rock crusher thing banging away up there at midnight. My cows cannot sleep. I've seen my milk production go right down. We've got to think about this. So then he became one of the strongest advocates for protecting property rights through the zoning process. Any questions about that? 95 to 5. Anyone want to have a discussion with me about that? Hey, I must be right? Okay.
Hey Bruce, I will.
Okay, you couldn't help yourself.
I think in today's political movement that, not in political movement, just in today's, most of us is probably, I'll even include me in this room right here, does probably advocate property rights as the most sacred thing that we can have. And so just, I think mentality out there, I think that number's off a little bit. Not that I disagree with you, because I know that zoning can protect property rights. I agree 100% there with you. But I think it's an educational process to educate people. You know, it's a public process. It's our job to kind of get that out there that, well, hey, we can protect you as much as we can hurt you too many
times. And maybe we haven't done a good job at the educational part.
Well, I think it's just in a movement. I think, you know, anything, I don't care. If you work for the government in this room, you're dirt right now. That's the way it is. And you can be kicked out.
You're wearing a big black hat, my friend.
Yeah.
and plus, when you live or in a rural community, you don't want an ordered society. You don't want any regulations at all. So that's, you know.
I have a different rule. 100% don't like zoning when you're telling them what to do with their property, and 100% like it when you're telling someone else what to do with their property that they don't like.
You know, I think I like your rule better than mine. Because I think that's been my experience as well. I'm running out of time here. Can I get an extra 15 minutes? Can we do that? Maybe you can vote against me if I'm terribly boring. Just say I can get out of here. I'll never do that.
You've got plenty of time.
So here's the process to adopt your zoning rules. This is right out of state law, but in a diagrammatic, illustrative form. An application comes in typically, if you've got a staff, and very few do, the planning commission is required to have a public hearing. The planning commission makes a recommendation, the legislative body, the planning commission, the board of county commissioners, the county council approves whatever you recommend, right? They approve whatever the planning commission recommends. Why would they do anything else? Well, maybe not. They have the discretion to do whatever they like, right? Because that's why they're elected, duly elected officials of the county. So that's the process. So here's some things. Remember, the topic of my discussion today is zoning, simple or complicated. So here's my attempt to make it as simple as you possibly can. This is borrowing from Miller County's administrative manual. Miller County adopted a zoning ordinance a couple of years ago. And by way of an administrative manual, and check going back, this is administrative now, this is not ordinance, this is a resolution, we adopted by resolution. This is the steps in the process to amend or change the zoning ordinance of Miller County. So if I'm an applicant applying for a rezone, I can get online or talk to Cheryl in the planning office, and I can see what the steps are. And so now you have text that is in state law and also in the Miller County zoning ordinance reduced to a diagram. I think this is much simpler. I have, my mind, I don't want to read all this stuff. I can see where this is going. Okay, we've got a few steps here. Am I good to ask for the rezone because there's a few steps? Maybe not. Well, I think I can get through this process. I can make a good informed decision on how to proceed.
Hey, Bruce?
Yep, excuse me.
Probably a legal question, you may or may not be able to address. Administrative manual adopted by resolution, not a law?
Not a law.
So due process?
Not a law, policy guidance only, policy guidance, but generally a way of proceeding for the county. And there is provisions in there, Charlie, that the staff will follow this process. But the advantage of doing it by resolution is, rightly or wrongly, doesn't trigger all the public hearings, which a lot of people don't involved in anyhow. And so the county can make a pretty quick change to say, oh, let's get rid of this step, this is not working. Let's make a change.
Just something that hasn't been talked about today that's on the list.
We might be coming to it.
Complete application?
Getting there.
Okay.
So, thank you, John. Appreciate the reminder. Thank you. Here's Wayne County. Wayne County adopted an updated zoning ordinance in about 2005, 6, 7. Maybe. Anyone from Wayne County, by the way? Maybe a little later. What they did was, as part of the Planning Commission's recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, said, these are all the pieces of property that we've rezoned that are not on the map. We want to make sure we have these tracked and this map changed, the zoning map of Wayne County, and these are the changes that we've made. This is the existing zone on the map, but this is what we've recommended, and this is what we believe the Board of County Commissioners have approved. So let's not lose this institutional memory of the county. Let's make sure we track this, and that was their way of, as they move forward, their recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners also went back and looked at all their recommendations on zoning to make sure they're all captured in the map, which I thought was a great idea. We're not losing those. So existing zones, state law talks about zoning districts, but you talk about them in zones, and that's what I do too. Here's some, I think, 6 issues I think you should be thinking about. Each zone should have a clear purpose, allowed uses. John talked about that. And you should have a discussion about the intensity or density of the allowed uses. Development standards, think about that. You have development standards as setback requirements, typically. Setback and height requirements. And parking standards. Development standards. The approval process and procedures for permitted, conditional, temporary, and seasonal, and other uses you may allow. And then a listing of prohibited uses. Let's talk about those. I'm going to pick on my friends from Miller County again. This is the way they did it. I like this. Cheryl, you like it too, don't you? Just love it, right?
I do like it, yes.
Not like love.
I love.
What we have here is the uses allowed in the zone, in all the uses allowed in Miller County, and right in a table of uses is a definition. I know you don't have definitions for every use you allow in your county. That's so important. So define what these are. What is necessary building structure? A definition. And then here's the zones in Miller County. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 zones for a county of 8,000 square miles, thereabouts. Maybe 7,000 square miles, right, Cheryl? 7,000 square miles. 7 zones. And now we have a listing P1, 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 P1. What does that mean? Well, P1 means that use can be allowed and approved by the land use authority, i.e. the land use authority is the county planner / zoning administrator. I don't have to go to the planning commission. As much as I love David and appearing before David Sterling every month, if if I want to get an accessory dwelling unit approved, or accessory building structure, I can talk to Cheryl and get that approved. So they were permitted uses, P1s, X means they're prohibited. A C1 means it's a conditional use, but 1 means it can be approved not by the Board of County Commissioners. This conditional use can be approved by the Planning Commission. For C1 uses in Miller County, the Planning Commission is the land use authority. Doesn't need to wait a month or 2 weeks to get on the Board of County Commissioners. The Planning Commission in Miller County can approve conditional use permits. For C1 type uses, saves a bunch of time. And then we have some down here that are P2. What's that? P2. Well, you told me, Bruce, that P1s can be approved by the county planner, county zoning administrator. P2 uses, if it shows that there's a P2 use, which is an accessory outdoor storage, in 4 zones it can be approved by the county planner, zoning administrator. In 2 zones it can be approved by the P2 people. Who are the P2 people? The Planning Commission. In Miller County, the Planning Commission can approve C1 conditional uses and P2 permitted uses. Here's an example. I've been careful not to use a lot of city examples. When I walked in here today, Cheryl said, "Come give us all this city stuff." I'm sorry, Cheryl. I'm breaking the rules. This is Ivans. This is Ivans in southwestern Utah. Same idea though. So here's all their zones, permitted and conditional and X. They didn't go to the additional level of P1, P2, C1, C2. They went to simply permitted conditional. But this is an interesting concept for you to think about. This is a way to streamline, I believe, your zoning provisions by having the use, the definition of the use, and where it's allowed, what zones, and how it's allowed. How it's allowed, excuse me. Simplify. Make it easier for the user, including you. We've had, picking on Miller County, we've had a discussion about what is an animal feeding operation? What is a concentrated animal feeding operation? There's been some changes in state law and rules about how to regulate animal feeding operations. You have a lot of these in the counties, right? You have feedlots, you have dairies in the counties, and state law and state rule has changed recently about that. So we had a representative come down to the Miller County Planning Commission from the Department of Environment and Quality and educate us about what are the changes. And so we're going through now and making changes to the definition of animal feeding operation to sort of reflect the mirror state law requirements and definitions. You don't have to do all this by yourself. You can lean on state departments that have some sort of a regulatory nature over animal feeding operations, residential facilities for persons with a disability, whatever it may be. Air quality on gravel pits. You can look to them to give you guidance on what the definitional material should be in your zoning orders for certain uses. This is going back now to 2000. This is Paiute County. This was the first zoning ordinance for Paiute County. Again, a small county with population, about 3,000 population, large county relatively, in area, 3 zones. 3 zones. 820, so minimum lot size 80 acres, 20 acres, and then an R1 zone, minimum lot size for residential 1 acre. You want to do anything smaller than 1 acre? Get yourself head over and talk to Marysville, Junction, one of the incorporated communities. If you're in a county, this is what is allowed. 3 zones. That's worked for 15 years. You don't have to have 50 zones. Think about the complexity and simplify as much as you can. So I'm just giving you a bunch of examples I know. Residential facilities for persons with a disability. This is an interesting discussion across the state. And this is borrowed from work I did with Gunnison City just in the last year. Changed the definition of residential facilities for persons with a disability to be inclusive of the State Department of Human Services, because they have certification and licensing responsibility. And so what the City Council in Gunnison, I think I would recommend this to you to think about, that residential facilities for persons with a disability become a permitted use if they can comply with certain requirements One of those requirements being complying with licensure and certification as issued by the State Department of Human Services. Therein lies another rule for zoning. You have the ability to coordinate and communicate with various state departments. Millard County and Gunnison in central Utah has built a good relationship with the staff member from the Department of Human Services. So before anyone at the staff level, at the administrative level, issues of residential facilities for persons with a disability permit, we coordinate and talk with Lisa Carter in Nephi about, have you got an application for this, Lisa? Someone wants to build a team discovery activity in Gunnison. Have you have an application? Yes, I do. Are you in process? Yes, I am. What's it look like happening? Well, we're in process right now. And so we coordinate carefully with state agencies about approval processes. You can do the same thing here. Here's the development standard. Lot standards, minimum lot size, minimum lot width, height, all those things you can put in a table. You don't have to read a lot of text. You can put these in a pretty, this is the cliff notes of zoning. Right? You can simplify. Items again, this is minimum lot size, various zones, look across. I don't have to call up Kevin Rudd in items. I can look at this online. Oh, what's my setback requirements? What's my maximum building height requirements? I'm in the RA1 zone, 25 feet. 25 feet. Oh, okay. Looks like I'll be okay on 24. Same thing. Maximum building height, lot width requirements, etc., etc. You can put those in the table form. I did the original, the table here was for residential, this one's for commercial. Then you can do illustrations, explaining what you need, building height. How do you measure that? Well, if you've got a flat roof, it's to the top of the flat roof. If you've got some sort of a parapet, it's to the top of the parapet. If you've got some sort of a pitch roof, it's to the top of the pitch. That's what that zoning ordinance says. And they illustrated it with illustrations. We're required to have some sort of a screening wall between a commercial industrial use and residential areas around it. What does that look like? Well, you put it right here on the Belvedere. Separate commercial industrial from residential. And you can show a little illustration. What do you think about that art? We can do it in text, but you can supplement it with illustrative materials in your zoning ordinance. Height. Well, here's the height of the building. This is the maximum width of this thing. Do a little illustration. Tell me what you're talking about. Show me. Help me. I'm a little thick. I'm a little slow. So, application requirements. Determination of application completeness, and that's what I wanted to touch on with John Mission. So here's the process for Millard County. Application comes in, falls onto Cheryl Decker's desk. Cheryl pulls out the ordinance, and the administrative manual says, hey, what's required for a complete application for a permitted or a conditional use? P1, P2, C1 or C2. Gets out the little checklist. Oh, requires 4 things, items A, B, and C. Bruce Park is here as an applicant for a permitted use. Requires items number A, B, C, and D. Bruce has only got items A, B, and C. What does Cheryl do? This flow chart says. Cheryl gives me a call, sends me a little note, says, Bruce, by the way, I've got your application here. You're missing item number D. You've got a certain time to bring in item number D. You've got your fees here. If you don't bring item number D in, I'm going to put everything back in a little envelope and shoot it back to you. So either I respond with item number D and get it to Cheryl, or she sends my whole thing back. Why is this so important? Why is this so important? The date that Cheryl determines my application to be complete freezes the zoning regulations in Millard County. I get to be reviewed, approved, or denied on the requirements that are in place on the date that Cheryl Decker determines my application to be complete. Right, Cheryl? On the date that freezes everything. Don't leave those things languishing in your office, incomplete applications. because I've come back. Chad, remember in 1995, I brought an application, I'm ready to go for it. 20 years later, you got an application, what's the problem? You've changed all these zoning things, but I had an application, right?
Yeah,
So-
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, you remember that,
Yeah, yeah.
but you had a question.
But I sent it back to you, remember?
You did. I didn't bring in your exorbitant fee.
Yeah. Non-refundable. Before you leave those ways to implement different uses there for permits and so forth, give me your thoughts on what you think of administrative land use permits.
Permitted uses essentially?
Well, what to use them? You didn't get down to administrative land use that I caught, did you? You got planning commissions, different levels, the legislative body, different levels. But administrative land use, similar to the conditional use permit, but issued on administrative level, what do you?
Permitted uses generally on an administrative level.
Right, with mitigation.
No,
Of course.
no, the requirements for permitted uses are going to be expressed in the ordinance. Either I comply or I do not. You can't add additional conditions to a permitted use. Either I meet the standards of a permitted use or I don't.
Right, but now moving on to like you use conditional use. A conditional use is also a permitted use with mitigated
Right, that
mitigation
condition.
impacts. The same with an administrative land use permit. Typically, you'd use that in the same method, but it's issued on administrative. Do you advocate that?
I'm fine with that.
You're okay with that?
Absolutely. That speaks to efficiency in a lot of ways.
Okay.
And if you have clear regulations in place that I know what I need to comply with, I can either comply or I don't. And if I comply, you'll approve it. If I don't, you'll deny it. I think that speaks to efficiency.
Well, not to be denied, because like I said, it's permitted use with just mitigated impacts.
Well, let's have a little chat.
Okay.
Let's have a little chat. Because I don't want you to cross the line between permitted and conditional uses. So here is a determination of application completeness. Here's an application of determination completeness. This is the steps. If it's not complete, Cheryl sends me back lock, stock and barrel, fee and all, my application and says, thanks very much, but it's incomplete. It's incomplete after I told you you had 45 days to get it complete. So what have you been doing, Parker? Sitting around? Been going training and exercising, talking to people about the stuff that's not following through? Right? John, you agree?
Just wanted to add another reason, okay, besides the vesting kind of an issue. From a planning commission perspective and a developer perspective, incomplete applications cause a lot of problems for both. You get to the planning commission level, and all of a sudden, hey, this is missing. Or, how can you get through the review process with the parking coming right onto the street like that? How does that happen? And, the developer gets delayed because the information is not complete, but you meet the ordinance.
And your planning commission sitting there like, what do we do?
Yeah, they're frustrated.
Sorry, Bob. Sorry, Bob, we've got you to the planning commission, but we can't do anything because we're missing item D. Right? Very good. So this is a flow chart from items again, a flow chart for permitted uses. I recommend these to you. I'm not going to belabor this point. Here's Midland County again on review of conditional C1 use application, right in their administrative manual. You don't have to have it in the ordinance. Here's Charlie Hewitt at Morgan County fiddling around with a project called Snow Basin, just a little project. 8,000 acres, 2,500 development units, and a ski resort and 1.5 golf courses. And did it by way of a development agreement. And what we did in the development agreement, because I think the management code was lacking flow charts, we put it right in the development code, the development agreement about what the steps were to review various types of applications in Snow Basin. So we had permitted, conditional, etc. So you can do that right in the body of your development agreements if you want to go down that road. Sorry to use Richfield, but your counties are so expansive and it's hard to get your zoning maps on one slide. So this is what a zoning map looks like. You can see red for commercial, yellow for residential, green over here for some sort of slope area. And here's one for Milton County. Here's a zone, essentially. We haven't done it as a zone, but could be one. This red thing, 1 mile wide, 105 miles long. created for several purposes, but mainly the location of interstate transmission facilities, oil, gas, hydrocarbon, petroleum products, high-powered transmission lines. The general plan of Millard County says we don't want to have these compromising a number of things. The amenities of our agricultural areas, adjoining our communities, or our tourist attractions like the Clearfowl water area. So we want to locate them in some areas that they're less impactful, and so we did it by way of using another implementation tool, the official map provisions that you have in state law. So an official map says, well, we can map transmission corridors, transportation routes, right? Typically used for roads and streets. But in Millard County, we said, well, transmission is also, transportation is energy products. So we identified an area where they should be going. And now, the providers that are trying to get power from Wyoming to Southern California, love it. Tell me where I need to go, pull out a map. Well, listen, Duke Energy, listen, Transwest Express. See this big red line over here? If you're anywhere in that, you're not going to have a problem. You can cross Millard County fairly easily. We'll have a conditional use permit for you. But if you're in that red area, you can move forward, right, Cheryl? I think it's been a great idea. Because we didn't want these things slice and dice in the county. So, it's okay, it may be necessary to be lengthy, but remember, use cross-referencing, use tables and flowcharts. Think about the format and layout of your zoning documents you're using. Use extensive graphics and illustrations, and then think about using administrative manuals without adding bulk to your ordinance provision. Think about your ordinance being searchable. So easily now in a PDF format, you can search on anything. You can search on the term building height. Anyone can search on that, right? Those 5-year-old kids are better with computers than I am.
I am in zoning.
They can search on that, electronic and online materials and applications and flowcharts of all types that you have them readily available. So I want to get to your homework quickly. Lessons learned, be clear, achieve a public purpose, and regulate for a reason. Be consistent with all statutory and legal standards. We talked about that this morning. Remember your county's land use pattern, your built environment, and the uses you allow is a reflection of your zoning rules. If you wake up, if you're going to bed like dreaming, geez, I'm not too sure what's going on in the county, stuff looks so ugly. Think about, well, it's your zoning ordinance that maybe needs a little tweak and change. Prepare for the future and plan, and then think creatively and do your homework. So here it comes. Okay, here's the homework. Go back to your county first thing Monday morning, 8 a.m. and check your orders to see if you provide clear and adequate definitions for all uses you allow. What are your notice requirements? Another clear. Who is responsible to make the final decisions of each type of land use application? Planning Commission, staff, Board of County Commissioners, County Council? Who is it? Do you think your zoning ordinance possesses procedural clarity? And do you also think it provides clarity and clear decision-making standards? So they're reflective questions for you to think about. Think about those things. So let's think about this. This is what I would do with my students. So I'll give you this assignment today. Here we are, the 26th of March, right? I'm pretty easy lecture, actually. Let's give you a month, right? And then talk about to one another about whether you achieved it. So think about, we talked a lot about zoning and stuff today, and why you're doing it. I made the point earlier that what you're doing in your communities will benefit you a little bit, but it will benefit future generations. Your grandkids and the commitment you're making now, as evidenced by your attendance here today, and by the way, I guess we'll be through that one. What you're doing is enhancing the welfare of future generations, the well-being of your community. So congratulations for what you do. It's been my pleasure to be with you for the last 90 minutes. Thank you for your attendance and attention. If you have any questions to me, I think you've got my contact information. But again, thank you for all you do. Go back home, be excited, smile on our face. We love this, and we're blessed to live where we do and participate and have the roles we do. So thank you very much for your attendance, and have an enjoyable afternoon and an enjoyable day tomorrow. Thank you.